Rogue Valley, and welcome to A Focus On. I'm Julia Babb, your host. I'm sitting here today with Trish Broersma, the founder and board president of Riding Beyond, the very small nonprofit having a huge influence in the lives of breast cancer survivors and thrivers here in Southern Oregon. Welcome to A Focus On, Trish.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks for speaking with us today. We're really glad you're here. I've always been very impressed about Riding Beyond, and I think the story is a very compelling one, and has led to some really incredible changes and positive changes in the lives of breast cancer survivors and thrivers who have participated in your program. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us just a little about how the program evolved?
Well, it was about 7 years ago. I attended a conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and happened to, at the opening address for the conference, the woman I was sitting next to invited me to come to her presentation. I didn't even know what it was about, but it was, she herself was a breast cancer survivor and had developed a program in therapeutic horsemanship for women recovering from breast cancer treatment. She herself had actually been in hospice and had climbed up on the back of her one remaining horse. And the next day, the hospice nurse asked her what she was doing to get better. And suddenly the oxygen level in her blood was better, her heart rate was down. And the only thing she'd done different was get on that horse. And she paid attention. And within a few weeks, she was out of hospice, and within a year, with the help of a medical professional, she was well.
That's
and so I came home that spring and had this idea that it had inspired me because I had accompanied two close friends through stage 4 breast cancer treatment. It had never even occurred to me that my horses could help them. So I was interested, and I gathered people and just said, you know, is this something we want? Is this something we need in the Rogue Valley? I was looking for something to offer our community, because I'd been teaching for several years in a lot of other places. So that's how we got started. We had a pilot program that was in June, that first gathering. In September, we had a pilot program, and really amazing things started happening at that point. I started noticing that my horse Mystic interacted with people in ways that were healing, and I had never recognized that side of her before. And she was actually my endurance riding horse, not one of my therapy horses, you might say. But she has stepped forward as the lead mare since then.
Her true calling.
Yeah, right.
Very good.
She definitely has we all discovered she had another career.
Yeah, that's great. I think you probably have more letters after your name than anybody I know. You've done an incredible amount of training and are certified on so many levels. PATH International, that's the Progressive Association. Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International. Certified Therapeutic Riding Instructor. Certified Equine Specialist. Okay.
And a mentor.
And a mentor and an MBIT coach, and I don't remember what MBIT stands for.
It's a multiple brain integration techniques.
That's right, yeah. You've also written a book, Riding Into Your Mythic Life, which I love, and it's still back in St. Louis, but I still have it. I'm just wondering when did horses first come into your life, and have you always had an affinity for them? And
you know, I don't think I was any different than a lot of little girls. Mm-hmm. My dad would take us out and, you know, ride ponies around in a circle who were, you know, hooked up to a sort of like a Ferris wheel kind of thing, right. Or not Ferris wheel, but you know, and then as I grew older and wanted a horse, I would pick, and my parents couldn't really afford it. Yeah. I would pick my friends according to who had a horse, and I think it, you know, provided. I lived in the city, and it provided a sense of connection to something bigger and exciting. I was in Oklahoma where it was very flat, far vistas, and there was this sense of horses could take me out past the horizon.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Oh,
yeah, but it was. And on into high school, my parents eventually, when I was about 14, did buy me a horse, and but I always saw it as a hobby, really. And I got interested in medicine and actually completed pre-medical requirements in college, and then became disillusioned with the whole nature of the competitive aspect of medical school and stepped aside from that. But I always kind of wanted to get back to horses. And one day when I was teaching, some 10 years later, teaching riding and training horses, and I was feeling like there was something more that I wanted to be doing. I was enjoying it, but there was something missing.
Right.
And I saw a newspaper article in San Antonio, Texas, where I was living at the time, about a therapeutic riding program, and I'd never heard of therapeutic riding at that point, and it was like this big light bulb goes off, like, you mean I can combine my interest in medicine with my passion for horses?
Yeah.
And I didn't look back. I started bringing in mildly disabled students into my lesson program, then I eventually started a nonprofit in San Antonio that's still going. And then after a few years, I moved to the Rogue Valley. That was like 25 years ago now.
Great, and the book is kind of an outgrowth of.
Yes, the book
even goes beyond the medicine and the
absolutely.
therapeutic stuff.
Initially, for many years, both at the program in Texas and the Hope Equestrian Center, which I ran here for 9 years, it was basically a traditional program working with people with disabilities. Yeah. But one of our board members here at Hope wanted us to work with at-risk teens, and one of the things I loved to do was to work with story and myth and possibilities, which I had done with my able-bodied riding program with students. And I thought, well, here's something I can do with at-risk teens. And so we combined, these young people were not disabled in any way, but they had special needs.
Sure.
And we initially started with the schools, and then we worked with Boys and Girls Club, but we finally settled on working with the Lithia Springs residential treatment centers. And we brought teenagers in for summer programs where we really looked at the whole person and enabling them to see the difficulties of their lives as part of something larger calling to them. And it became a really effective program for supporting the therapies that they did at Lithia Springs. And they were very enthusiastic about the effectiveness of it. And so eventually I wrote a book about that, expanding it to how it applies to anybody who's got, looking for their larger story, so to speak. And it certainly informs what we do at Riding Beyond. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been out to Riding Beyond. I've participated in as a volunteer on a volunteer level. And with after all of that introductory sort of talk, I want to get into the breast cancer survivors and thrivers part of this. So much of breast cancer in America it seems so pervasive. I can't think of anybody who hasn't been touched by breast cancer in some way. It's a friend or a mom or a sister, an aunt. So I'm just wondering, it's so devastating, not only the disease, but the treatment as well. And I'm just wondering if you could help us understand some of the after effects of what survivors go through.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it is that they're unprepared for the after effects. They're, after the medical field has done their job in basically releasing them cancer-free, or maybe increasingly they're living with cancer for many years to come, and they're not really prepared for the after effects. A study a couple of years ago showed that 80% of women finishing breast cancer treatment have symptoms of PTSD.
Wow.
And they're not the same symptoms that war survivors have, but it's a similar situation in the sense that the general public is not aware, as it used to not be aware. Now they're quite aware of what veterans need. And so anyway, women, they have anxiety, they have a sense of having been suddenly cut loose from their support system in the medical team. And so they have trouble like getting a sense of their own well-being and what they intuit about how to take care of themselves. They've also often become sort of hibernating from other people, reclusive. They don't want to be touched. They don't want to touch other people. They have physical issues that continue on, pain, fatigue, hormonal issues, all kinds of things that impact their self-image. They often also, this ordeal, if you will, just brings up huge questions about what do I want to be doing with my life? It's a wake-up call for many women, and they really need some help in addressing it. Oftentimes, though, their family members just don't understand, and it can be very challenging to relationships in the family.
Yes.
And so it's a very complex issue that I've noticed in the last 3 years, I'd say, at national conferences that have to do with breast cancer, that they're not just focused on treatment and curing cancer, but they're starting to attend to some of these issues and give women some guidance for what it's going to be like and what the options are for them to attend to these issues. But it's just really in its infancy, I'd say.
Right. And I think the important thing is that, well, maybe that just leads into my next question, which is basically how does this process, what is the process and how does it work? I mean,
because a lot of people, they hear about Riding Beyond, they can't imagine how a horse can help with these kinds of issues that women may have. And so there's a lot of aspects to it. In fact, there's been some research that helps validate the results that we get that have to do with working with veterans. And I really have been fascinated by that research. Basically has to do with the horse's heart. And the Institute of Heart Math has funded some really interesting research for at least 10 years. And it basically, the horse has a larger heart than people do.
How big is that?
And, it's like something like this, and they're able now, because technology and so forth, they're able to measure the energy field that heart gives off, and it goes out like 60 feet away from the horse. They can measure it that far away, compared to the human heart, which goes about 10 to 15 feet. So it's a much bigger energetic field. They also have a particular rhythm that's measurable that they call a coherent heart rhythm. And that particular heart rhythm is associated with states of peace and calm and joy, okay? So what the fascinating research is that they'll have a veteran who's hooked up to a heart monitor. So they, often veterans, anyone with PTSD will have a heightened heart rate, low oxygen level in their blood, and anxiety. They may not be able to take a deep breath. So they hook up the veteran and the horse to heart monitors, and then the veteran will just go and spend like 15, 20 minutes or so hanging out with the horse. They might groom the horse, but they might just stand with the horse and touch the horse. And they're able to see in real time, after about 20 minutes, that the human heart entrains with the horse's heart. Wow. And so that that veteran feels, sometimes for the first time in years, they feel that state of calm and joy and peace, because it's actually affected their autonomic nervous system, which they haven't been, we don't have conscious control of it. Right. And so that's that relationship with the horse, that sort of energetic piece, is one of the things that we work with in Riding Beyond. And it's focused on relationship. Right. And it's, even though it says Riding Beyond, it's actually beyond riding. And some of the women do get on the horse. Sure. I'd say about half of them do. But many of them say, I would have gotten as much out of this if I hadn't gotten on the horse. Right. Because it's a profound relationship that happens, and it has a multitude of benefits. First of all, just that whole sense that women often have of having become isolated within themselves. The horses sometimes, they can actually experience this connection with the horse for this first time. That's the beginning of them reconnecting with family and loved ones. Okay. And there's also a sense of getting reconnected with themselves. Women often say that they've reclaimed a sense of their knowing what they need, that they hadn't had before. Another thing that we do is we work with the fact that horses, as opposed to other animals, are associated in the human imagination with heroic tales. Just about any good story has an amazing horse in it.
Well, I won't tell Puss in Boots, but
yeah. Well, you know what I mean, though. And like Shadowfax, and the Black Stallion, and they reside in the human imagination in a place of beauty and power. Yeah. And so we actually work with encouraging in their imagination the sense that this horse is their companion of beauty and power. And our very first client, in fact, she went out to greet, our first thing is just to greet the horse. She puts her hand out and the horse touches the back of her hand. And Mystic immediately stepped forward, much to my astonishment, and she started nuzzling her in the solar plexus area. And I'd never seen her do anything close to that, ever. And I was actually worried she was going to bite her. And then why wasn't this woman stepping away? Because I knew she was actually a little timid about horses. And it went on for a long time, 30, 45 seconds. And I was the one who finally had to stop it just because I couldn't stand it anymore. And she said that Mystic had touched into where her tumor was. She was actually in the middle of breast cancer treatment, this woman was. And that the reason she hadn't moved away was that she felt this amazing energy just pouring into her, and she just wanted more and more of it, okay? And in the coming weeks, she was very articulate about the fact that she had a new companion in her life, that she said she would just think of Mystic when she was happy, when she was sad, when she was depressed, and that every time it lent this sense of a powerful companion and that she could move ahead. So, that's a very similar story that we hear from the women who come to Riding Beyond. Right. That they emerge changed, in a sense that they are living their own heroine's journey, you might say. Yeah. That they
ties back into the mythic life.
Yes, the mythic life, for them to be able to see the larger story, that this is a part of, to give some meaning to this challenge in their life. Because, it's often a huge wake-up call for women to have breast cancer. And they want to get some handle on, a new sense of meaning in their lives. And so that's a lot of what we offer.
Yeah. I know I've participated in some equine assisted. I haven't participated in your program, but I have done some other equine assisted stuff, and it feels like a validation, and that's exactly what you need when you're in that tight, just a really. It's not like life used to be type of spot, So as I understand, I know you said that only some women get on the horse. But as I understood it, it was a process of getting onto the horse, and
that's one of our key activities. Yeah. But we can accomplish the same effect by leaning into the horse. But yes, they climb up on the horse bareback with some preparation ahead of time. They're actually on a pad, but no saddle. They turn around, face the back of the horse, and then they lie down on the horse's rump. And in that activity, there's a lot of things that happen. First of all, there's a compression chest and abdomen area, which is where the ventral portion of the vagus nerve runs up and down this part of the chest. And so that controls a lot of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So when they're lying down on the horse, they're also experiencing a sense of nurturance from the horse. You know, it's warm, you know, she's very receiving. And then when they sit up, there is a release of the diaphragm. There's an opening so that they often take a deep breath. We encourage them to do that. Mm-hmm. There's a shift from the sympathetic nervous system, which is the part that's keeping them breathing. They're breathing shallow, you know, the PTSD symptoms, right, into the parasympathetic, where they have a sense of relaxation and rest and trust. And so that's one of the key activities. Then they turn around and ride for a little bit too. Yeah. But, you know, if someone can't get on the horse, we show them how to actually make bodily contact with the horse and have that connection. And then they walk with the horse to music. Mm-hmm. We found some music and songs that the horses walk right in tune with, and we all are into rhythm together. And so there's a sense of connection with a larger world, mm-hmm, that they can just revel in, really.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. So, and you don't just work with the survivors and thrivers. There are other people in the community. I know you mentioned that you're going to do some training with some professionals.
Yes,
so you do have other people, and like the families. I mean, that would be a great thing.
Yeah, that
would be so great.
Well, we realized right when we first started the program that families and friends and even the medical professionals didn't have a clue why this might be helpful. So we started having Saturday sessions that are for the general public, mm-hmm, and it starts in May, and there's once a month through the summer. But then our profession needed to know about it. So I've presented in England and around the United States in professional circles for people who are therapeutic riding professionals, mm-hmm, introducing. They're just not aware in general of the need that, you know, breast cancer is at epidemic proportions. Yep. And so we've probably trained I'm sure 500 people have been trained in the Riding Beyond model. Yeah. And it's not necessarily just for breast cancer. Some of them have taken it to any other kinds of cancer. Mm-hmm. And but it's you know, it's gaining hold. I presented at conferences and so forth. Yeah. No,
because I mean, I can only imagine, but I think it just seems like it would give you such an amazing sense of yourself and your connection with other beings.
Right. You know, it's really the entire natural world. I mean, we see the horses are sort of ambassadors, for, you know, for our, you know, becoming stewards of the earth, really. Mm-hmm. And we take that responsibility very seriously. Yeah. And, you know, I'll say more, I think, in our next show about the special gifts of the horse. Definitely. Other gifts that lend to the power of this, mm-hmm, this experience.
Yeah, because I do know that they're, you know, a cat or a dog, that's nice, but you can't get on them. That would be mean.
That's part of it. But they're also, you know, predators rather than a prey animal. True. And that's a huge difference. You know, that horses are prey animals, so that lends them certain characteristics and traits that dogs and cats don't have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Well, I know that after seeing today's show, a lot of people are going to want to get involved, either as participants in your program or as volunteers.
Yes.
And
we can't do it without our volunteers.
We are going to flash the website address up there, but otherwise, I guess they're just going to go to your website, which again is just a fabulous website. I was telling you earlier that I think it is the next best thing to being there, you know.
Yeah, we've got videos, we've got testimonials and stories, facts and figures, and
the blog is amazing.
And blog, shows some of the research.
Other people's stories are just incredible. Yeah. And very inspiring. obviously.
So we have volunteer training twice a year, and volunteers help out in a lot of different ways, not just hands-on with horses. And so we welcome volunteers.
Yeah, that's great. And you've got a volunteer training coming up in August, I understand. So
March and August is when we have them.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So definitely head to your local internet and you will find all of this information about signing up for the volunteer training. And it is, I've done the volunteer training, and that part is very rewarding.
Yeah.
It's absolutely rewarding to watch someone, to witness someone going through this and kind of coming back to their own, you know. So,
Coming back to life, opening doors to the future.
Exactly.
That's our slogan.
Right. So I'm really sorry we're out of time. I want to thank you again for coming on the show today and providing us a little glimpse of the vital healing work that you are doing.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, thank you to the equine beings and that make it all possible. So, and we'd like to thank SOU for their support of Rogue Valley Television, RVTV. And an extra special thanks to our fabulous producer, Wanda Borland and her all-volunteer crew for making today's program possible. Thank you for watching A Focus On. I'm your host, Julia Babb. See you next time.